On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So what do we have in this episode, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, this week we are going to be talking about mystery cats around the world with our two very special guest stars. And we're also going to be continuing our conversation with CFZ Canada Supremo David Scott about the mysteries of Canada and all sorts of other stuff that comes up in conversation. Enjoy.
I really like the old credits.
Nuneaton, the jewel of the South Midlands, the town who gave us such great men as George Eliot and Larry Grayson, the throbbing heart of this teeming metropolis, the pearl of the CV13 postcode, down by the roundabout and up the one-way system, is Nuneaton Town Hall, where we can find none other than Nuneaton's Mr. Entertainment.
Hello ladies and gentlemen and boys and girls, I'm Barry Tadcaster and this is my friend Ken Jevons, who is an Orang Pendek. Hello, my name is Ken Jevons and I am an Orang Pendek. Unlike the other Orang Pendeks, I do not come from the Indonesian island of Sumatra. I come from the London borough of Lewisham, where I am employed by Lewisham Town Council as an ombudsman.
So, Rossiter, what's been shaking down at the old Youth Outreach Centre in Brixton then?
Oh, Barry, I have been introducing the kids to things that are not altogether moles, or crows, or ants, or buzzards, or decomposed human beings, but something that I cannot and must not recall.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and welcome to another episode of On the Track. I have to actually say this bit at the beginning, and I used to say to sort out the wheat from the chaff, but that does sound really rather rude to all the people who are coming each week to this show for the first time. So I'm going to say, in order to sort out the wheat ears from the chaffinches, and no one is going to be offended by that, except for people like Louis, who probably don't know what a wheat ear or a chaffinch is.
Of course I know what they are. They're two small British songbirds. Duh. Da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum, da-dum, da-da-da-da.
Well, for once I've got one over on Louis. He thinks that I don't know what he's talking about with that pop culture reference. But I know perfectly well. It's from some American chick called Billie Eyelash, from a song called Not Very Good Person. Ha, see, Louis? For those of you not in the know, who I believe I have dubbed chaffinches, this is a show which goes out every Wednesday evening at 6:30 for about a quarter of an hour, and every Saturday afternoon at 3 for about half an hour, and occasionally other times of the week as well. And it is a general mishmash, and I still haven't found out which Douglas Adams book that came from, so please, if you do know, write it in the description, whatchamacallit, the comments, that's the word, the comments below. It's a whole general mishmash of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's a reality? Well, you're just going to have to ask Archie.
I think it's something to do with the cats, because cats are not very good, not like well-behaved dogs like Archie.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here again with two of my closest friends, Richard Muirhead and Richard Freeman. And what does an elderly gentleman like me do when he has his two closest friends, or two of his closest friends, come and visit him? He puts them on a sofa, covers them up with a fake wolfskin rug, and asks them questions. Richard Muirhead. Mystery cats which are not British big cats, or for the sake of it, Australian big cats. Mystery cats that are foreign. Discuss.
Well, the one I've been interested in a long time is a report of a sabre-toothed cat, tiger in Chad, in a northern part of Chad which is quite mountainous. I think this is reported in one of Bernard Heuvelmann's books that has not been translated into English. I think it's called the Tigre de Montagne. That's one of its names. Also, the now long defunct journal Cryptozoology, the International Society of Cryptozoology's journal, once reported on 2 or 3 mystery Peruvian cats, one of which was described as having brightly coloured, like rainbow coloured fur. And there's the one that other Richard knows much more about. Is it called the Cigau?
The Cigau.
Cigau. Is that Sumatra?
That's in Sumatra.
In Sumatra.
Well, with that you came close, but no Cigau. That's not my pun, that was Lars Thomas's pun. Tell us about the Cigau, Richard, and say how you did. Tell us how you did come close, but you did.
When we first started going to Sumatra, many years ago, we were
20 this summer.
Good Lord, 20 years ago. We went up to a place in the northern part of West Sumatra called Kerinci Sablat National Park, and there the belief in the Cigau was current and people were frightened of it. They said it had yellowish fur, was larger than a leopard but smaller than a tiger, more aggressive than both of them. It had longer front legs and back legs that gave it this sort of sloped back hyena-like visage shape. It had a small bobbed tail similar to what a lynx would have, and it had a slight ruff or mane around the neck, but not so much as a lion, and its canine teeth were enlarged like daggers and hung down. The description of it sounds like a Homotheres or a sabre-toothed cat, and the fossils of those have been found in the neighbouring island of Java, and they were only about 10,000 years old, which has led to some speculation that this might be a surviving Homotheres. We never met anybody that actually saw it. We spoke to people that knew of it and were very frightened of it. And Debbie Martyr said that whenever anybody reported a Cigau, a whole area would go into what she called a Cigau panic, because they thought one was loose in the area. And she'd heard stories of one living near a river in the mountains where there was a fallen tree and people used to cross the river, and if anybody slipped and fell into the river it would dive in and grab them. It was supposed to favour areas where there were rivers and other sources of water and live up in the mountains. Now when we're going further south in Sumatra, like we have been recently, people have either never heard of it or dismiss it completely as a myth. So it could be that it's extinct in the southern part of Sumatra, but in the northern part of western Sumatra, whatever it is still around, or it could be completely folkloric.
What do you think it actually is, Rich?
It's one of those things where there's not enough current sightings for me to say I think this is a real flesh and blood animal. Its description sounds like a sabre-toothed cat. And it's not impossible that such a thing is surviving in the remote jungles of Sumatra, but we just need more information, more current witnesses. I'd like to speak to some people who claim to have seen it, because I never have. I've spoken to dozens and dozens and dozens of people who've seen the orang pendek, and a few that have seen the orang kardil, but I've never spoken to anybody who's seen the Cigau.
Would it be a good idea to ask Dally if he can hunt out some Cigau witnesses for us?
Yes, well, Dally showed us a load of prints he'd taken, and one of them was the print of a tiger, but it was absolutely gigantic. It must have been the father of all tigers. It must have been a freakishly big tiger. And where we were on the last expedition, last September, the local people said there was something called the Haramau Tinki, which means the tall tiger, because there's a long tradition of were tigers in Sumatra, and the Haramau Tinki was supposed to be a tiger that walked like a man. And the area where we were in, there weren't supposed to be any tigers, so we thought this was completely folkloric until we caught a tiger on camera trap. So what we think's happening is that an area where there's been no tigers for a very long time, and tigers are just starting to come back into this area, they get stories told about them, and people think that they are shape-shifting were tigers.
Do you think this has a parallel with the eastern pumas in North America, which have in many places become almost folkloric animals, and they are thought to be a myth or a ghost until somebody hits it with a car?
Yeah, well, we've seen that the eastern panther's a real thing. They've been caught, they've been shot, they've been hit by cars, they've been filmed. And we know that the puma, to give it its proper name, the puma, is moving back from the west US and Canada into the eastern areas. It's just expanding its range again, which is a perfectly natural thing and a good thing.
Well, something similar is happening in Europe, isn't it? Britain is now the only country in Western Europe, not, in fact, the only country in the whole of Europe not to have wolves.
Yes, and I find the hysterical anti-predator mindset, particularly from right-wingers, utterly disgusting. Everywhere else in Europe they're bringing back the big predators. Here in Britain there are areas in the north of England and in Scotland and in parts of Wales where we could bring back small populations of the brown bear, the European wolf, the European wolverine, the European lynx. We've already reintroduced the beaver. The wild boar has been reintroduced by accident and is doing very well. We've got the eagle owl starting to make a comeback in Britain. So we should be bringing these back. We should be looking to bring these animals back because it's great for the environment and it'd be great for tourism. The chances of them attacking people are very, very slim indeed. In Abruzzo National Park in Italy, they've reintroduced bears and wolves and there's been no incidents of attack. Occasionally a sheep or a cow might get taken down, but you can have a compensation program for that. And we have hundreds of square miles that are owned by toffee-nosed idiots that just use them for breeding pheasants to be released and shot by other toffee-nosed right-wing idiots. Now the pheasant is a foreign bird to Britain. It was never part of the British fauna, but 50 million of them, and I'll say that again, 50 million of them are released into Britain every year so that for fun. Now, in order to breed these pheasants, a lot of the upland areas are stripped of vegetation, stripped of trees, because the pheasants like eating fresh shoots of plants and grasses. And because the trees aren't there, there's nothing to hold the water, so you get flooding in the lowland towns and villages next to these areas. So we should be buying these areas up, or forcibly taking them, and we should be replanting them, joining them up with corridors of vegetation so you can get from one place to another, and bringing back all the great predators of Britain. There are some forests already, like the Kelder forest, and possibly the Forest of Dean, which could support small populations already, and the Highlands of Scotland and places like that. And we should be looking to rewild and replant other areas as well, so we get great swathes of forest like you get in Northern and Eastern Europe, and we can have all these fantastic animals back again. But it'll never happen under the Tories. Certainly not.
At the beginning of the last election, when all the leaders of the different parties stood up and gave their speeches, one, totally out of the blue, came back with a very ambitious plan for rewilding Scotland. And embarrassingly, it was Nigel Farage, who's somebody I never ever thought I would say I agreed with on any topic whatsoever. But he seemed totally sincere about rewilding and came up with facts and figures that actually made a lot of sense. Before we go, because I can see that Richard Muirhead is looking, he's flagging, poor lad.
I am flagging, yeah.
We've been filming all day, and poor Richard has been in front of the camera, being put through his paces. But Richard, I believe that the alleged sabre-tooths in Chad is something that is one of your things that you want to solve most of all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's very little information about it. A French hunter, I think his name was Christian Lenoel, was with a guide, a local guide, and he heard this incredible roar or sound, and he thought, what the heck is that? And he asked his guide, and the guide seemed to be very familiar with it. Oh yes, it's the mountain tiger, tigre de montagne. But there's never been any, as far as I know, it's never been photographed or sighted by, it's never actually been photographed or anything.
Do you realise that if it was translated into England, Christian Noel's name would be Christian Christmas?
Yeah.
But Richard Freeman, in order to wrap this one up, what do you think about the possibilities of a saber-toothed cat of some description, whether it's a scimitar cat or one of the larger saber-tooths? What do you think about the possibility that one of these could have survived into the present day in Chad?
The thing about saber-toothed cats was that they hunted in a very particular way, unlike any modern cat. They didn't jump on their prey and stab with the teeth, because the teeth were too thin in cross-section. They weren't like the teeth of a Tyrannosaurus rex, which were thick in cross-section and sharp down one end. They were very knife-like, so they could have broken very easily. What paleontologists think that saber-toothed cats did was grab onto their prey with their claws, grapple it down, and then use the saber teeth to slash the throat. So they hunted fairly large, clumsy prey. So there would need to be a population of fairly large, clumsy ungulates or some form of herbivorous mammals for these things to feed on. But Chad is one of those countries you never hear anything about. I think it's supposed to be one of the poorest countries in the world, but you never hear anything about Chad, and no one's ever gone and looked for this thing. So I would like to go and look for it, just because nobody else has looked for it, and nobody else goes really exploring in Chad. So sabre cats, they wouldn't be high up on my list of cryptids I think were likely. They wouldn't make it into the top 10, but I'd love nonetheless to go and check it out just in case.
Something that's always intrigued me, because I lived in one of the suburbs of Toronto for a while, about 40 years ago. And the thing that interested me a lot was the stories of the huge snapping turtles.
Oh, I've seen some big snapping turtles in my day.
There are two main species of snapping turtles. The alligator snapping turtle, which isn't supposed to come any further north than South Carolina.
Yeah.
And there is the common snapping turtle, which comes up right up into Canada. But the common snapping turtle is only supposed to be about that big. And there are stories of ones that are much, much, much bigger.
Much bigger. Well, a turtle will live for 200 or 300 years, will it not?
Yes, allegedly.
Given an unlimited food supply, I think it's the same as anything else. It'll continue to grow. It might not grow proportionally the way it's supposed to. It could be a fat snapping turtle. I've seen some big ones, though. I have seen some really big ones. The person to talk about snapping turtles would be my wife, Wanda, as she's part of the turtle clan. So their family history is very steeped in turtles. So she has a good working knowledge. I could ask her for you.
Nice. Maybe she'd like to come on sometime. Maybe she'd like to come on the show and talk about turtle lore, because that's fascinating.
Yeah. She probably would. She's not shy. She's married to me.
You have quite a few Bigfoot reports as well coming in, don't you?
Pardon me?
You have quite a few Bigfoot reports coming in as well.
Well, I'm kind of lucky. I hooked up with Ontario Sasquatch, which is a Ontario Sasquatch research team, which is very, very open. They keep nothing to themselves. They will share everything, and they're sending me at least one or two a week right now. They are posting them on their site, and I have access to them. I just have to go dig them out. So that's actually going to be my March update.
Well, that's fantastic, because then I'll post your bulletin both in the newsletter, which, by the way, boys and girls, you can get for free just by signing up for it on the address link on the main CFZ website, and it'll also be posted up as a blog as well. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. The only thing I'm having trouble with is I thought MUFON Canada would be far more reactive to getting exposure, but I had a very interesting one. You saw it, the one from last fall from Linda McGuire, and I thought that should be investigated right away. And I still have not heard back from Canada, but I did meet a gentleman from the United States from MUFON USA, and he is working on it himself. So I just went. Linda's in the Caribbean right now, so as soon as she gets back, I've asked her to write it up on their website for him, so that he could push somebody up here. And paranormal. I'm not huge on paranormal. I don't like ghosts and spirits and shadow people. That's one of my creepy crawly things in my life. Where I work is haunted. It's an old haunted house that they tore down and built the car dealership. And I've had some strange encounters with shadow people there. They're always at the corner of your eye, as you know them to be. So it's but it's a very uncomfortable feeling sometimes at night. when you're there. I'm trying to listen to podcasts or watch a movie, which is, I'm watching bad Bigfoot movies on Tubi or something. And there's been some good ones, though. Don't get me wrong. There's been some really good college-made films on those, but they always portray Bigfoot as this big mean monster, and Ontario Bigfoot, I don't think are the same thing as West Coast Bigfoot. I think they're subspecies, much like a lowland and a mountain gorilla. They're different species, and they have very different tendencies. West Coast, Texas has a lot, Pennsylvania, and you'll hear confrontations with them in certain areas, but none in others. I saw Bigfoot, and he kind of looked at me, then he walked away. Where other ones, he roared at me and charged at me and threw rocks. And so, one thing that I thought in the Nahanni, going back to the Nahanni, is there's reports of small ape-like bipedal creatures, and very much like a Vietnamese rock ape. By the sounds of it, they're a little aggressive, and the rock apes, I think, are relative to the orang pendek. If you look at if you take in consideration the Bering Land Bridge still being there is actually, you could see a pathway where they could have migrated during the Ice Age and back during those eras. So I'm on my article right now. I'm just at the Ice Age. I haven't even stepped back into human habitation. I started off with native folklore, and then I did the brothers because people are going to be looking for that, and I just figured I need to get that out of the way. And then I went back and I started showing Ice Age critters that could still have their remnant populations. That's when I came across the I can't remember what the today people call it, but there's actually illustrations from newspapers of it, meeting with people, coming up on people. So it was quite fascinating.
I think somebody's going to have to send an expedition out there.
I think it's going to have to be a big expedition, because I think it's probably one of the most. There's a lot of rapids, a lot of water, a lot of sheer cliffs with rock falls, bogs, moose. Of course, you still got bear and moose and whatnot to deal with in those areas too. So I would say a fairly decent sized expedition with some protection. Because if even one or two of those legends are real, boy, that's going to be I don't want to go.
I don't think I've got a very good excuse that I can't walk, so it's easy. I can say I'm not going there. I don't think I'd want to go there even if I could walk. But
I'd love to see it because the pictures from there are beautiful. But I think it sufficiently frightened me enough. If I ever got terminally ill, to touch wood, of course, but if I ever did, then I might. Must go see what's going on. I'm going to die anyways.
So what else is there in Canada? Because you've got the lake monsters we've already talked about, but there are some other lesser known ones, aren't there?
Oh yeah, you can go into Skinwalkers and all their subdivisions, and with the Ruparoo, which is a werewolf, or we call it Dogman. There's so many. There's just the little folk. The little folk in Canada is amazing. The Weedles of Prince Edward Island were I don't know. I actually wanted to go back and start working on that again because I got thinking about pygmy tribes, old pygmy tribes from our childhood. You'd hear about the pygmies, and you don't hear about them anymore. But I actually think that might very well have been what the Weedles were. And when the Native Americans, or the Aboriginal people, First Nations people, went to settle PEI to go hunting and fishing, they met the Weedles, and the Weedles fought them tooth and nail to extinction, according to legend. But there's a creek bed in Prince Edward Island called Bloody Creek, where this battle supposedly took place. But there is still reports through Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, what's the other one? The other East Coast province. Oh, I'm a horrible Canadian. That speak of little people. And then you have them scattered across. Manitoba has quite a few. So it's, I think when they found Florensis, it kind of opened up that is a more credible things, because everybody, you think of little people, you think of fairies and leprechauns and whatnot, and people, no. But now I think it's a little bit more mainstream, because we do have a hominid that we proved existed at one time that was that tiny. Your studies on orang pendek, I've seen some of the videos that have been taken of the orang pendek, the fleeting glimpses and that. There's definitely something there. And of course, I followed your expedition, this last expedition, with rapt attention, and there's definitely something, a little people on the planet. And George is back from Georgia. I don't know, that sounds weird. He is my Vietnam vet. So he will be up soon to talk about his rock ape adventure, escapade battle.
Well,
Yeah, they got
fantastic.
Yeah, his unit got attacked by about 40 of them. They were throwing rocks, and of course they returned fire. Unlike the first American, if you look at that in depth, there's the first American encounter with them. The Americans, they're just monkeys, and they started throwing rocks back, and a lot of them got killed because of it, because the rock apes actually knew how to use the projectile, instead of opening, so that was an interesting. I haven't dug in there very deep. As you can tell, I'll look at anything. I'm fascinated by almost everything.
Well, when you do start looking into the rock apes,
Mm-hmm.
we've got somebody from Vietnam who wants to get involved with the CFZ, who's actually has been researching them on the ground. So I'll put you two in touch. And
oh yes, excellent. Yes. Yeah, George came back Friday. I think he's going to swing by work tonight. He works nights too, but he moves from site to site in his job. So he said he would swing by sometime this weekend. So I will see him, and I'll try to get that interview done with him. And then I can send it to our Vietnam vet.
Yeah, please.
Rep. Yeah.
I will, I will put you in touch with each other. And if you can you get your interview with George on video?
Oh yes, definitely, yeah.
And see if you can, if he's okay with it, then we can put bits of it on the track, because I think this is something absolutely magnificent that we really need to chase up.
Yeah, George has already agreed to do the interview, so he's already said, yeah, that's fine, I'll talk about it. I think a lot of the Vietnam vets, so many of them encountered them, that it's not a big thing for them. It's not like us, I have never seen a Bigfoot. I'd love to, but let's say I saw a Bigfoot, and you were just John Downs, my next door neighbor, and didn't believe in anything. You go, well, yeah, Dave, you're nuts, Where I think with them, so many of them saw them. It's a way of life for them. It's an adopted species that's there. They all know it exists. I think if you spoke to, actually, if we got some Vietnam vets watching this, I'd really love to hear back from you as how you guys feel about the rock apes. I think that would be some really good knowledge. From what I understand, they don't have any problems at all speaking about them.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page, and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, wants me to remind you, always press the notification bell, or else you won't be told when the next show's going to be.
And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
Well, that's about it for this episode. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who helped. I hope you enjoyed it, by the way. I particularly enjoyed doing this show. It's always nice when the two Richards come to stay. But I want to say thank you to my guests this time, who were Richard Freeman, Richard Muirhead and David Scott. And I also want to say a big thank you to the people but for whom blah blah blah, particularly Graham, who is an absolute sweetie, as well as being the Deputy Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, a post he's held for over 25 years now. He is also my carer, and that means in recent months he's spent most of his time pushing me in my wheelchair around the labyrinthine corridors of North Devon District Hospital. And I also want to say a big thank you to my producer Louis and to my adorable housekeeper Miss Judy, but for whom this place would look like it was some sort of an open sewer frequented by alcoholic badgers. And as you can hear there is Archie, the CFZ dog, doing what he does best, which is rushing around the kitchen barking. Now, I also want to say I'm going to be back on Wednesday. What are we going to be talking about on Wednesday? Don't ask me. I only work here. I've got absolutely no idea. We've got a lot in the can, so we'll find out when we get there. And I'll be back next Saturday. What will we be doing next Saturday? Well, I believe that Richard Freeman and Richard Muirhead will be going through the first 5 issues of Richard Muirhead's magazine, Flying Snake, and choosing their favourite stories from those pages and discussing them. And that I've already filmed that, I've already edited it, and it's a really smashing programme. So, ladies and gentlemen, it only remains for me to say, oi, McCrinnan, are you awake? Because if you're awake, McCrinnan, I'm going to be back here on Wednesday, and if you're there to watch, I'll be seeing you.